everyone, shalom, ciao, namaste. I am Ilana, aka Elmar Superstar, and welcome to my channel. This is PCP Pop Culture Psychology Television Analysis Edition. I am super duper stoked because with today's video topic, I had so much to say that I had to split it into 2 parts. I know that some of the hype has died down, but I still wanted to add my 2 cents. I'll admit that I was late to the Squid Game party, and I ended up being one of those people that loved it more than the ones that recommended it to me. Squid Game has inspired me in so many ways. I had it on when I was editing my last video on Shushan, and it even inspired me to start writing again. It kind of became my comfort show, which I know sounds really weird to say aloud. I don't have far to go. People already think I'm weird. I would have it on when I was doing my makeup or cleaning my room. Recently I used it as a palette cleanser after watching And Just Like That.
Woke moment!
And just like that, I had to put on Squid Game, a show about people killing each other for money, to balance out the monstrosity of the Sex and the City reboot. As an almost lifelong fan of the franchise, I could go on and on about how horrible this continuation was, but that is a video for another day because today we're going to talk about something good, which is Squid Game. Saying that Squid Game changed the game would be the understatement of the century because it went full Katniss Everdeen and shattered the arena. It's been faring pretty well on the awards circuit, but I think we're really going to see it shine at the Primetime Creative and International Emmys, and the trades seem to think so as well. It hits on every single aspect from performances and overall aesthetics, writing, and directing. Along with most of the North American audience, I started the show unfamiliar with its cast. The only one that I recognized was Ho Yeon-jung since I follow the fashion world pretty closely, but I was surprised to find out that the male lead is actually considered the Brad Pitt of Korea and is a professional model, which makes sense considering he's pretty cute. And he knows he's cute, okay? Jung-Jae knows he's cute. This leads me to something that I wanted to acknowledge within the video, but I figured it was more appropriately suited as a standalone point rather than an entire segment. A big piece of the pie that made this show so successful was its cast. All of the male actors have their own individual, unique sex appeal. These are not the typical leads the Western audience is accustomed to seeing, and that is what makes them so intriguing. As will be discussed later on, Gi-hun is presented as a fixer-upper with these adorable puppy dog brown eyes, and awesome hair, and wacky laugh. Plus, we've all seen the Dalgona scene, and let's just say, it looks like he knows how to please his lady. For Gi-hun's actor, Jung-Jae, he's unconventionally handsome, which is totally my type of guy, but that is a video for another day. Before I get into the video, I would like to address a trigger warning as some heavy topics will be discussed. Unlike my Fargo video, I was not able to keep these videos as spoiler-free since certain outcomes are meant as points of validation on specific topics, but I still advise you as my audience to watch the series in its original language and form your own perspective. With that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dogs and cats, I am so proud to present to you Squid Game, Primetime's Parasite, Part 1, and let the games begin. How far would you go to change your own life? What would you do to obtain a mind-numbing sum of money that could either heal or enrich your life? It is the personification of money being the root of all evil, as coined by the nefarious Gordon Gekko.
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good.
Would you pull out all the stops to ensure a new beginning, or would you take the fall with no way out? What happens when such an idea is presented in the form of a fictitious competition series on one of the biggest entertainment platforms of all time? Perhaps by the end of this video, an answer will be provided, as the topic will be further explored on this episode of PCP Pop Culture Psychology Television Analysis Edition. It has been quite some time since television audiences have seen a show that is simultaneously gritty in terms of intensity and realistic to first world problems, but this was provided with Squid Game. Squid Game is a South Korean dystopian drama that debuted in September 2021 and went on to become the most streamed Netflix original series ever, surpassing the streaming giant's previous record set by their own Bridgerton. The show continues the trend of Korean entertainment domination into the mainstream masses, and such a sensational success has paid off monumentally for its stars. There are influences of history and pop culture scattered throughout the show, but what really makes it stand out is the mise-en-scène. It's incredibly sinister how all this mayhem and chaos is centered around a child's vibrantly hued world, but one of the show's strongest suits lie in the aesthetics, especially the music. The incorporation of Fly Me to the Moon during Red Light, Green Light and the touches of world music throughout the games adds such a dynamic touch. Jung-Jae II, 23, and Park Min-joo truly did a spectacular job in creating an edgy, beautiful original score, starting off with a circus-esque way back back then for a Tarantino-styled opening scene, and ending the show with subtly cool unfolded. French and Spanish strings are heard in needles and dalgona during the pivotal moments for the second game, African drums in The Rope is Tied for the tug of war, as well as Bollywood and African musical vibes in the hypnotic, intense track for the glass bridge. Whether this is done to provide a unique flair or highlight that the games are international, it was a very fresh and artistic decision for such a wonderful soundtrack. The concept is the true meat of the show. The price of winning and to finalize a new beginning is too high. One can earn an exorbitant, life-changing amount of money, but it is at the cost of bloodshed and death. This dilemma is reminiscent of a paragraph from Oh, the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss. Do you dare to stay out? Do you dare to go in? How much can you lose? How much can you win? Lastly, the global phenomenon of Squid Game would not be complete without its well-rounded cast of characters and fantastic actors. Some characters were revered and others are considered a bit underrated, but today is a deep dive into what are probably two of the most misunderstood characters on the show. The hero versus villain of Seong Gi-hun and Cho Song-woo. From childhood friends to grown frenemies and the stark contrast between them. One is more docile and one is more headstrong. One is more conniving and the other is more sensitive. But it is about how their journeys in the arena evolved them into another version of themselves. Seong Gi-hun is a character that people are split on the most. He's either very much adored or completely loathed. Gi-hun is presented in the pilot as the epitome of a hapless schmuck, which could be considered a gamble in the way of character introduction, but it actually works. While he falls under the lovable loser trope, there were times watching the pilot when the theme from Curb Your Enthusiasm could have easily been incorporated with Gi-hun's antics.
저기요, 죄송한데 아까 드린 10,000원 좀.
To paint the male lead as a flawed protagonist was a rather noble risk, as it will potentially be seen whether or not Gi-hun will travel to a sinister mindset in upcoming seasons of the show, which was already developed during the first season with him gaining a better grasp of reality past rose-colored glasses. Gi-hun's odyssey is the embodiment of comedy and tragedy. For this, Jung-Jae deserves all the praise and then some for delivering such a raw performance. All throughout the first season, the show had a huge sense of irony and foreshadowing. In the beginning, we see Gi-hun as an active gambling addict, including indicative signs such as stealing from his mother and doing almost anything for money, only for this situation to be reversed when he is in the games and his performance is the basis of bets by the upper class. To them, he's nothing more than a nameless number, but Gi-hun's character goes beyond the surface of ranking. Even though Gi-hun is perceived as a failure, it is not for lack of trying to create a stable life. He had attempted to succeed the natural way by starting his own businesses, but it didn't pan out. These unsuccessful ventures resulted in Gi-hun getting a divorce, owing money to the bank for the business loans, and led to his gambling addiction, which sent him into further debt. To go back even further, the first domino was knocked down 10 years prior to the show's start, when Gi-hun was laid off from his job as a mechanic right before the birth of his only child. Along with his co-workers, he participated in an employee strike that not only caused him to miss the birth of his daughter, but also witness the death of a co-worker. Having endured such harrowing experiences and judging from actions exhibited, Gi-hun is a prime example of an individual suffering from complex PTSD, also known as post-traumatic stress disorder. Symptoms of PTSD include intrusive thoughts, nightmares, insomnia, vivid flashbacks, angry outbursts, and self-destructive behaviors, all of which have been seen with Seong Gi-hun. To reference the previous episode on Fargo, Gi-hun draws a couple similarities to deuteragonist Lester Nygaard, how both men are deemed unworthy due to their lot in life. Gi-hun's treatment by others is heartbreaking to watch, especially with his ex-wife disowning him as the father of their daughter Ga-young, and her new husband bribing Gi-hun to permanently leave his daughter's life. Gi-hun is nowhere near the best dad in the world, but it's obvious that he does love his daughter. She is the driving force that sends him into the games. Despite all of this, he still has hope that there is some goodness left in a world that can be bleak and disappointing, sticking in those morals even when it forfeits the chance of securing ultimate success. Gi-hun was poised to be the winner from the start, as he is the show's main character, but this has still sparked a debate on whether or not the right person won. This will be further discussed in part 2, but such an outcome within the heroic storyline is not uncommon. With movies like Rocky, the point of the loss was for a bigger lesson or goal to have been achieved. It was not entirely about winning the prize, but rather a win for one's inner self. Like Rocky, Gi-hun is also the underdog, but he proved that his strengths were best suited in a leadership role. He did demonstrate that he could think quickly on his feet, but Gi-hun was nowhere near the best player. In fact, he has even been considered to be one of the worst players of the game and is an example of getting by on luck by chance. With that being said, Gi-hun is an ideal winner in the sense that he would pay off his debts and settle down to a new life with the cash prize. whereas characters like Deok-soo and Han Min-yo are examples of the criminal echelons who would have used their winnings to further plunge the world into chaos. Alas, such a victory does not come without consequences and downfalls. This is not the last that will be mentioned of Seong Gi-hun for the series, but there cannot be a protagonist without an antagonist, or in this story, a deuteragonist, which comes in the form of Cho Sang-woo. One of the focal points of the show was about the message of capitalism in the food chain, how those with money will always be favored over those in poverty. It is the concept of greed and wanting more money, with good enough truly not being enough. This is shown with characters that worked hard in respectable professions and then lost sight of the bigger picture. Squid Game presents the painful and ugly truth that our status can play a big part in shaping our lives and treatment by others. Somebody like Gi-hun is treated as a lowly subject, while somebody educated like Sang-woo is seen as a king, even though he was secretly crooked. Sang-woo is one of the most compelling characters in this series, with Park Hae-soo's chilling performance nearly echoing that of Bryan Cranston's Walter White and his alter ego Heisenberg on Breaking Bad. The world of the games can bring out the best or worst in a human. In Sang-woo's portrayal, both facets are clearly represented. He is a typical overachiever, dedicating his entire life to ensure his success, which included sacrificing any kind of happiness or personal relationships. Such hard work was not only noticed, but idolized by those around him. This could have contributed to his misogynistic and narcissistic behaviors, but also led to the point where he was inwardly shamed by his own reality and could not disclose his problems to his biggest fan, which is his mother. Another strong element of Squid Game is that of parenthood and family, not only in regards to treatment, but in how far one would go to provide for them. Gi-hun's relationship with his mother is clearly strained, but Sang-woo is very much adored by his mother, which is why in the long run, his deception ended up hurting her more than the truth. This is a classic example of prideful and self-sabotaging behavior stemming from fear of failure, because while Sang-woo is undoubtedly transparent, he still cannot admit that his downfall was of his own making. Sang-woo is one of the strongest and best players of the game. He played with intelligence, quick wit, and logic, and this leads to what is quite possibly one of the biggest arguments surrounding his character. The penultimate game of the glass bridge is when it really boils down to morals. Sang-woo's previous actions had only been witnessed by the audience rather than direct character interaction. Even though both Gi-hun and Sang-woo are valid in where they stand on the incident, ultimately, Sang-woo made the right decision and is justified. Player 17 was indecisive and literally running out the clock. It was a move that had to be executed to get to the final round. The show gets very brazen in emotional portrayals, which can also be ruthless at times, but Sang-woo's actions highlight what one deems necessary to ensure survival and take those along that are lucky. For this reason, Sang-woo could be characterized as an anti-hero or a deuteragonist antagonist. However, it is important to note that out of all the perceived and confirmed villains on this show, Sang-woo most clearly demonstrated that he had a conscience. In his final breaths, Sang-woo reminisces to Gi-hun on their childhood and how nobody calls for them anymore. Perhaps reflecting on if his life had taken a different route. Would he have ended up in the games? As we get older and establish our lives, we can lose a sense of ourselves, feeling completely alone in this world. This final act could be perceived as a way for him to turn things around for somebody that had helped him before, with Sang-woo's sacrifice being a true swan song of paying it forward. This is the end of part 1, and in part 2 I will be discussing the flaws of the show, because as fantastic as Squid Game is, it was not without its problem areas, as well as where a second season could go, which, if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm starting to dread. Before I leave you, I discussed pretty heavy topics in today's video. Some of it can hit home more than others considering the current state of the world's affairs. I want to let you know that if you are struggling, you're not alone and there are organizations out there to help through difficult times. I've listed a few resources in the description box below for the National Gambling Addiction and Gamblers Anonymous hotlines, as well as the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration hotline. They are all open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and strictly confidential. I really hope this helps somebody so we can all heal together. The only thing I have left to say is that is going to be the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you like it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe. I'll catch you in the next wave of emotions. Bye!